Hello, everybody, and welcome to the third episode of Costa Mesa Now, our Costa Mesa podcast, where we just have a lot of fun and talk to people who are important to our community. Today, I've got from the great District 6 on the east side of Costa Mesa, Council Member Jeffrey Harlan is my podcast partner here, and I call him the sage of the east side of Costa Mesa because he is a very wise man, and we benefit by his wisdom on the council. And then over here to my left is Jeff Chon, and Jeff Chon is a restaurateur on the east side of Costa Mesa, and he has Oak and Coal on the 17th Street, and also Tabu Shabu, which is not only on the 17th Street, but also in many other locations. And then Mario Marovic, who has really been a part of transforming 17th Street into a great place. Both of these restaurateurs have a great place to go. And among his many other properties that he has, the three in Costa Mesa are Wild Goose, Country Club, and
Playa Mesa.
Playa Mesa. How could I forget Playa Mesa? I love Playa Mesa. And then he's got other properties that we'll talk about in Costa Mesa. Two very important members of our business community, and of course, Jeff Harlan on council. So, you guys ready to go?
Sure.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
All right. It's great. It's great. So, Jeff, let me ask you this question to get it started off. So, the way we do these podcasts is we bring in a council member, and they can kind of pick their topic and pick whatever that they want to talk about. So, why did you pick this topic and these particular guests?
Well, Eastside eateries just seems to be kind of this emerging thing. 17th Street in particular seems to be a hub. Mm-hmm. And obviously, it's seen a transformation over the last probably 10 years. Places that were not really destinations that were sort of there are now becoming, places where people of all stripes come to. So Mario and Jeff have properties on either side of 17th Street. And we were just talking about that a lot of these restaurants have kind of expanded well beyond Costa Mesa. And so, what starts here really kind of takes a foothold elsewhere.
Right. So, Mario, your first restaurant in Costa Mesa was the
Wild Goose Tavern.
The Wild Goose Tavern.
Yeah.
But when you bought it, it was just kind of a dive bar type place.
Yeah, we bought the property in 2008, and the previous tenant was the Little Knight. And the Little Knight had a reputation for being called the Little Fight. It was kind of a rundown little dive bar, there's nothing wrong with that. But he decided to improve his operation, move the Triangle Square, and then we were stuck.
And it became the Black Knight.
No, the Black Knight the Little Knight became the Black Knight in Triangle Square.
Right.
And a little known fact is the current Country Club restaurant.
Yeah.
That used to be called Pier Street Annex, used to be called the Black Knight.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so back in the 1960s, the Country Club was the Black Knight. It became Pier Street Annex, and then it became the Country Club. So the Little Knight in Triangle Square, they got their name from the Black Knight, which we own that property as well.
Yeah, that's great. And then next you transformed the Pier Street Annex into Country Club, right?
Yeah, so the Little Knight relocated, and then we remodeled the property, became Wild Goose Tavern, which was really small at the time. And since then we expanded and made it better and improved everything. The Pier Street Annex, we acquired that property and we turned it into the Country Club. And the Country Club is kind of an upscale steakhouse, pasta. It turns into a dance club at nighttime on the weekends. So it went from Pier Street Annex, where you can grill your own burger on the patio and you bring your own meat, BYOM.
Yep.
And then now it's a Country Club.
Yeah, that was a huge transformation. What did you see, potential did you see in Pier Street Annex to make you think that you could realize this vision that we see now as a Country Club?
The potential was the location. It was being in Eastside Costa Mesa. That was the big draw. When we redid the Pier Street Annex to the Country Club, we tore the entire building down, and we always like to keep a little piece of the history. So you have that iconic A-frame that was at the Pier Street. We kept the A-frame, suspended it in midair with freeway shoring, built the entire brand new building underneath it with electrical mechanical foundation. And when we were done, we set the A-frame back down on top of a finished building.
Wow.
And that was just our wanting to have a piece of the history remain on 17th Street.
Yeah. And then Playa Mesa is the third place. And that was a different places before it became Playa Mesa, right?
Yeah, Playa Mesa, when we took it over, it was Ruby's, and it was Ruby's Burgers, but then Ruby's Burgers converted it to like a different concept. It went from the 50s Ruby's to the 60s, which didn't really make any sense. It was their last, like a Hail Mary throw to try and make the location viable. And I think the problem with Ruby's is it used to be Boston Market, it was Don Jose's, it was an Italian restaurant before that, it was Ruby's, and every one of them failed, partially because some of the concepts that were there became irrelevant. And part of it was nobody ever put the proper amount of capital into the building to give it a proper remodel. Right. So they kept putting lipstick on a pig and trying to call it something else. So when we took it over, we tore the entire building down to the ground, redid all the infrastructure, and made it Playa Mesa with hydraulic, bifold opening windows and light, bright, fun, and now it's Playa Mesa.
And tons of tequila.
And we have
how many tequilas do you have?
Between the tequilas and the mezcals, we probably have about close to 80.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
that's great.
Scratch Kitchen. We recently Yelp just voted us the best margarita in the state of California. So to have to have that accolade from a national platform is pretty cool.
Which margarita was?
It was just a margarita in general. So what Yelp did is it was National Tequila. It was National Margarita Day. And they they analyzed their analytics for every single Mexican restaurant in the state of California. And they said that Playa Mesa had more unique comments about their margarita than any other restaurant in the state.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. And right here in Costa Mesa.
Yeah.
All right, way to go. Yeah. Well, because we have, I say this a lot, I talk about restaurants to anybody who will listen to me about the Costa Mesa restaurants. And we've got 17 of the top 50 restaurants in Orange County, and we have 2% of the population. So it's pretty amazing what the restaurant community has done in Costa Mesa to have it a destination place. So let's talk about Jeff, Oak and Cole.
Let me just add to that comment.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, it's also only Orange County city that has Michelin stars. Pretty cool.
Yes.
And we do have a lot of good food in Orange County, but it's pretty cool to have a couple Michelin stars down here.
What does that mean, Michelin star?
So,
I know we have some Michelin stars, but what does that signify?
The Michelin guidebook is basically the ultimate Bible of culinary accolade, right? So, you have different types of accolades. You have the James Beard Award and things like that, but Michelin has always been known, and it is the tire company, I believe, that came out with this guide that's basically focuses all across the world the best restaurants in the world. And so three tiers: single star, 2-star, 3-star. 3-star, there's only a handful of them in the entire world. I mean, really have to reach a whole nother level. And then 2 stars, and then 1 star. But to get a star is a very difficult thing to do. And for the longest time, California in general was ignored. I mean, NorCal got some attention. You had a couple single stars in San Francisco and Northern California, but Southern California, for the most part, was generally ignored. Orange County was completely not on the map. Yeah. So, you had a few in LA, and then you had a couple years where LA didn't get recognized with any stars. And then, out of the blue, Costa Mesa started popping up, with Taco Maria getting a star, and then there's a phenomenal sushi place in the lab that Hanare that got a star, and now you got Knife Pleat in South Coast Plaza. It's pretty cool. It just shows you that the culinary culture of Orange County is Costa Mesa.
Yeah.
You don't see stars anywhere else. They're not in Santa Ana, Tustin, Fullerton, Irvine. They're here.
Yeah.
So,
cool. And we talked about before we went on air how 17th Street specifically has become a real destination spot for restaurants. So talk about that and how your restaurants fit into that.
So, I started my restaurant career with The Alley in Newport Beach. Took it over in late 2006. But I lived in Eastside Costa Mesa. So I lived off of 16th. So, going to the restaurant.
Is that where you grew up?
No, I grew up in Palos Verdes. But
okay.
After college, I kind of settled down here in Costa Mesa, Newport Beach area. So, and then having the restaurant down the road, I loved Eastside. So settled down into Eastside and been there 10 years or so. But when I was living there, I just noticed that there really, at that time, wasn't a expansive menu selection, right? I mean, it was pretty basic. You had the Wedge Burger on the corner, you had Pier Street, you had a couple bars, but there was really no cohesiveness to anything. It was just they were things that existed for a long time and a couple places to go eat, but nothing really special. And I thought that what would be pretty cool is bring some ethnic flair into the neighborhood. So that's why, in 2011 we started planning Tabu Shabu with opening in 2012, and really was a Hail Mary. I mean, I had no idea how it was going to go because shabu shabu itself is a pretty niche concept. It's not sushi, which has gained a lot of popularity, or hibachi, or any of these things. But shabu shabu, I was like, I don't know. It's not a predominantly Asian neighborhood. This might not work. And then we tucked ourselves in the back of this small strip center, that had a karate studio and a vacuum repair store next door. Like great rent, but I was like, I don't know if it's gonna work, but.
Right.
And didn't go nuts, didn't build it out to make it look gorgeous, just said, hey, let's try to be authentic with the food. Let's, mess around. My mom was making some of the recipes in there. She made a homemade kimchi that we sold, and it was almost an experiment out of fun because I lived right there.
Yeah.
And then we just saw it take off, and I'm like, oh wow, this actually did work, And it was cool to see that you could bring something really ethnic and communicate it in a way that, all different demographics would enjoy it. And we saw that really happen. So, I mean, from there, I kind of kept spinning that over and over again, and hence Oak and Coal in 2017. We opened that place, which had a focus in Japanese yakitori and little skewers on top of charcoal grills, and, another kind of out of the blue concept, and it worked.
Is there any restaurant like Oak and Coal, or I mean, how did you get the idea to focus on
so
on yakitori?
If you go to Tokyo, I mean, it's all over. So
Okay.
I did like a little food vacation where I went to Tokyo and I went to all the different I mean, it's street food there. It's all over the street. You can go anywhere and get yakitori, and unfortunately, I would say it's better just because it's more authentic being in Tokyo, on the streets, smoke in the air, and,
Right.
There's old Japanese businessmen smoking cigarettes and eating yakitori. It's pretty cool. I mean, the whole vibe of that scene. And so what we wanted to do is try to bring a little bit of authenticity into a more sit-down environment, an upscale environment. So I mean, it's been done before. I would say, we are pretty unique. We've had to re-gear the menu a few times to make it a little bit more suitable to, what people wanted in Newport Heights and Eastside Costa Mesa. So, but we've been very successful. We're actually expanding right now. We hopefully, if the building department, does well, we get our permits to open at the end of this month for our expansion, which is a bar. It's called the Oak Room, and it's basically, craft cocktails, but the regular original Oak and Coal was very loud, very family oriented, which we love. We don't want to change that, but the Oak Room is a little bit quieter, date night, dark, dimly lit, trying to get a little bit of the Mario vibe in there.
Little speakeasy vibe type?
Yeah. I've always been kind of anti the word speakeasy. It sounds exclusive. It has an air of to use the right words here without being offensive, but it just
like
has
the Prohibition era type thing?
It kind of seems snooty when you say it's a speakeasy. It's like almost like it's exclusive. I don't believe that in our business exclusivity is a good thing. Right. We're very inclusive. We want everybody to enjoy themselves, have a good time.
It's not what you're going to say. One of our city values is inclusivity.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that everyone should have. I mean, assuming you can behave yourself, should have the opportunity to come in, and it shouldn't be a place where I've always hated walking into a bar and and it's a craft cocktail bar, and you're like, oh, I'll take a Bud Light, and they look at you like, oh my God, what the hell's wrong with you?
Right.
What the hell's wrong with you? I want a Bud Light.
Yeah, exactly.
They're fantastic and refreshing. Like it doesn't mean I can't appreciate a $25 smoked old fashioned, but I don't want that now. I want a Bud Light.
You want what you want when you want
exactly. And I think in our industry that should be the vibe. We're service oriented. We should give our guests what they want and not push this air of we're going to tell you what you want. It's like, no.
So for the record, you can get the smoked old fashioned and the Bud Light at Country Club.
Yes.
It's true.
Yeah, I always think about that. When people say something's exclusive, I say, well, if it's exclusive, it most likely excludes me. That's right. Yep. I've never been able to get into anything exclusive in my life. Yeah, so we were talking, like I say, off air about how you guys are friends and not really competitors, but collaborators almost in creating this destination, and how all the different businesses and restaurants on 17th Street kind of feed off of each other and help each other.
Yeah.
Explain that. That's because to some people who are think of the business world as kind of cutthroat and competitive, that's somewhat counterintuitive, but it's interesting to hear you guys take on that.
Well, I think the restaurant industry and bar industry of the past has always been very competitive. You had a guy that opens up down the street and everyone gets nervous, like what's going to happen? And I was lucky enough to meet Jeff in about 2012 after he opened up Tabu Shabu. We went to an Angels game together with Brady, and he was just the nicest guy. He kept trying to buy me tequila shots.
Yeah.
And he was just a very nice guy. He mentioned inclusivity. He just included me and into the group and the friendship. And we were competitors. And at that time, we were opening up the Wild Goose Tavern. And we're smart enough to know through history that all these people in the past that were always worried about their new competition, they always ended up doing better together. And if you look at the Newport Beach Peninsula, there's multiple restaurants and bars, and they all do well.
And you own all of them.
I only own about half of them. But it's been like a case study. We've had competitors in the past that we viewed as competitors, and they closed for major remodels. And we thought, okay, they're going to close, and we're going to absorb all this temporary business while they're closed. And we've actually seen our sales drop because it became less of a destination. And on 17th Street, when we opened up the Ruby's closed and we became a gourmet Mexican restaurant, we saw the Wild Goose sales increase. When Wild Goose expanded, we saw the country club sales increase because it just became more of a destination just in general. Well, when Jeffrey opened up Oak and Cole, it just brought more people to that side of 17th Street. They go to Oak and Cole, they get dinner, they walk across the street, they come to the country club, and now he opens up his new bar, and that'll be a little bit more of the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So each of you have what I would call like a concentrated footprint. Like you've got 3 restaurants close proximity to each other on 17th. You've got 2 in the same strip mall and expansion. Is that by design that you're just familiar and comfortable in that area, or do you kind of look broader in Costa Mesa, see if there, or even Newport, that there are places you want to go to?
It's a little bit of both. It's by design in the sense that when the opportunities came up, we saw the value in operating multiple concepts that are close to each other with geographic proximity. And also it allowed us to kind of reverse engineer a concept that's going to be synergistic instead of competitive. So when the Pier Street Annex property came up, my biggest fear was, what if somebody opens up something really similar to the Wild Goose and wants to directly compete with us? Now, having more operators in the same geographic area is not always, not competition. Sometimes somebody opens up something really similar to what you're already doing, and then, it's direct competition. But Jeff is smart enough to reverse engineer his concepts and create Oak and Cole based on what he felt the community needed. That's what we did for Country Club. That's what we did for the old Ruby's, that's now Playa Mesa. When the Playa Mesa property came up, that was Ruby's, at the time, my partner and I, we didn't have a concept. It was the property came up for sale. Okay, we knew we wanted it because it's next door. What do we do with it? It wasn't like we're McDonald's looking for locations that are going to be good future McDonald's, or we didn't have an existing concept that we thought would be good there.
So you first bought the property?
Yes.
Okay.
We first bought the property and had no idea what to do with it. And we just knew that it's 17th Street and we had to have it. And then once we acquired it, the conversation was, what does the community need? What's the fit here for the community? And we talked about there's a void in absolute gourmet scratch kitchen Mexican food. Hand squeezed margaritas, homemade tortillas. We got the gals on the comal, the big rotisserie grill.
Right.
The girls are making their tortillas by hand all day long. And there's nothing like that in Eastside. There's other Mexican restaurants, but not like Playa Mesa. And so we were trying to fit that niche that we felt was complementary and also synergistic, where it would rise the tide for everybody in the area.
So it's interesting to me how kind of scientific that is, and both of you have an educational background. You have an MBA from USC, or you went to USC?
I've got my undergraduate in entrepreneurship and my master's in business from the Marshall School of Business.
And then you went to UC Irvine.
I'm not nearly as impressive.
But you
as
went to
that,
UC Irvine.
Yeah, I did. I graduated from Irvine. I minored in management, and then I kind of jumped out of school and went into real estate for a little while still working in the restaurant industry. So, and then my dad was a self-employed entrepreneur his whole life. So I would say the majority of what I learned was from my dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a great teacher.
Yeah.
When you have that opportunity.
Still a teacher, unfortunately, even though I don't need his teachings anymore.
Is he still involved in the business?
Not at all. He was never involved in the restaurant side of things for me. You know, he kind of let me do what I needed to do. But, you know, he, in terms of, you know, things like taxes and setting up companies and just how the inner workings of how to be a self-employed businessman. Now I've had to evolve beyond that, you know, because my dad always kind of old immigrant mentality, focus on one, sweep the parking lot, you know, really don't let anybody else do it because they can't do it as good, you know.
Yeah.
And then obviously when you expand and have more locations, you have to learn how to delegate and learn how to trust people and train them to emulate you and do the things that you would do. So had to evolve from his thinking, you know, because it's first generational immigrant mentality is different. I think Mario comes from the similar background,
I do, yeah.
you know, with a hardworking dad, and it's pretty cool that you have that, and we're very fortunate to have that. But no, he still offers his 2 cents. I mean, in regards to everything. I mean, I just moved into a new house, and he brought over his old furniture because he felt like it needed it, and I really didn't feel like it needed it. But you know, it's just it's a dad always going to be imposing.
You can't say no to a free couch.
He did an entire room, like showed up with a moving truck, no forewarning,
Sounds like
just
my dad.
hey, I'm outside with a moving truck. I said, can you send it away and go somewhere else, please? You know, so, but you know, I mean, as tough as that is to deal with, you know, it's a blessing to have that. You know, it's a blessing to have somebody you can look up to and really appreciate for helping you. You know? And so, and yeah.
That's an education that you can't buy. It's the you know, street smarts. My father and my mother were both Croatian immigrants. My father was a cabinet maker. He was orphaned as a young child after World War II in communist Yugoslavia. And when they came from Croatia they came to America. My mother cooked in the kitchen. My dad managed the finances in the front of the house in like a little neighborhood tavern. And it was,
Where was that?
It was in Orange, and there's another one in Anaheim, and it was actually called the Wild Goose.
Oh, how funny!
Yeah, so that's
that's just a coincidence, or
Well,
is that why you named it?
That's
why
we
you
named
named it.
Yeah, we named it as a tribute to my parents' first restaurant bar.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so I was a little kid. You know, I hung out in the restaurant bar. I was 5 years old. They couldn't afford daycare, and I literally went to a cowboy saloon every day as a child in a smoke-filled room where everyone's eating burgers and drinking beer, and I was just smoking cigarettes inside back then. And I was a little kid just walking around the restaurant, and I vowed that I would never do it.
Yeah.
Because it seemed like a hard job. Right? I watched my parents work so hard, and then after graduating college, going to work in Silicon Valley, it's that old saying, you don't know what you have until it's gone.
Yeah.
Then I realized I really missed the hospitality industry. I never thought I would. I missed the human interaction. I missed the relationships and the environment that I grew up in. And then I quit my job, moved back home, and much like Jeff, most of what I know came from my parents.
Yeah, yeah. That's a great education.
It's the best
Great Joni Mitchell reference too. Joni Mitchell, that's big yellow taxi.
Mm-hmm.
I knew you knew that. So you ask a question.
No, I'm not going to.
Ask a question. You don't need to.
A robust question.
Ask a robust question about something other than Joni Mitchell.
Well, I kind of want to go back to something Jeff was talking about earlier, which was the Michelin Stars. Because what I find really unique about Costa Mesa is that you have this wide variety of dining options, whether it's a Michelin star restaurant, which incidentally, they're in kind of the strangest locations, right? Like you would expect that at a place like South Coast Plaza, like Knife Fleet, but the one at the Lab is kind of tucked in the corner. Taco Maria's in the middle of South Coast Collection. So it is the Costa Mesa is often seen as kind of this emerging foodie area. Do you kind of think of it that way at all, or
Definitely,
100%.
big time.
And so how do you expand from that? What do you think are going to be the kind of emerging either restaurants or concepts that are going to come here?
Well, I think the trends are always changing. And when Jeff had talked about going to a nice place and ordering a Bud Light, and people were getting a little snooty prior to 2013, And there's so many speakeasies, quote unquote. And a speakeasy is a great term because you got people that call themselves a speakeasy, but they have a Facebook page and a press release. The whole premise of being a speakeasy is actually being secret, right?
Yeah.
So the trends will continue to change, and I think Costa Mesa is always going to be on like the cutting edge of like what's relevant and what's new and what people want, and there's longevity. And if you get too trendy, then you go out of style. And when we were opening up the Wild Goose in 2012, we were right on that cusp when all that snooty bar stuff was kind of, people were getting a little tired of it. Like when the chef was telling you like, what you should order. And if I walked into a bar and said, give me a vodka soda, like, vodka, why are you drinking vodka? I'm like, well, do you carry it? Yeah, well, if you have it, I want it.
Yeah.
And then when we opened up the Wild Goose, we literally sat down and had a strategy meeting and said, we don't want to be snooty. We don't want to be that new spot with craft cocktails and only craft beer. We want to sell a Bud Light, a Coors Light, a Corona, and also be able to offer elevated cocktail program. You could have both.
Yeah.
And probably 75% of our sales are locals. They're the people that live in the community that go in there and want the Pacifico or a burger, right? So if we would have jumped on that too trendy fad at that time, I don't think the Wild Goose would be what it is today. And I think the thing that made it successful and the thing that's going to make other restaurants successful in the future is acknowledging and identifying what the trends are, but keeping true to your culture, keeping true to the culture of the community, and not trying to implement things or bring things to Costa Mesa that are trendy, but bring things that are relevant, and knowing that distinction.
And one thing about you, Mario, is you're kind of really a triple threat, I think, in terms of because you've got the restaurant tour aspect of the industry, but you also have the real estate piece where you're picking out and dealing with the real estate portfolio, but also construction. So like you have to, and we've had some issues, right, where we've had to interact when you had construction projects at Playa Mesa and Wild Goose. And so let's just take Wild Goose. So when you remodeled that and completely transformed it, what was that process like from kind of vision to execution?
I would say the most interesting thing about what we do is we build and construct things for the next generation. And that's an active conversation that my partner Andrew and I have all the time. Oftentimes when you lease a space, you have a lease. The lease is 10, 15 years, whatever it is, and then you invest enough money to justify how much time you have on that lease. And what's even more interesting is 15 years sounds like a long time, right? But then you get 7.5 years into a 15-year lease, and then the value of your business starts to diminish every year. Your lease gets shorter and shorter. And then people stop reinvesting into their ongoing business based on an end date being near. And we purchased our properties because we never wanted to have that, how much can we invest to justify the term, decision to make. We overinvest into it. We upgrade the infrastructure, the fire sprinklers, the plumbing, the electrical. We make everything safer. And then also we could make it much substantially nicer based on the fact that we don't need to worry about an end date, and we can hand it down to the next generation and know that they have something special that was built correctly. And I think in Eastside Costa Mesa, you'll notice a lot of those properties are not the best looking properties. I just call them stucco boxes. Like you look up and down 17th Street, and you can tell, the people that just kind of looked at their property or their business as, how can I justify the investment? Whereas we justify it by making it as nice as we can. And you look at our quality of our construction, I like to say it's pretty special.
It is, yeah.
So if you look down 17th Street, well, another great example is Pete's Coffee.
Yes.
Pete's Coffee on 17th Street were the landlords. Their lease came up. We had a dozen different leasing agents call us up and want to release it to another concept. One of them was Phil's, and they're willing to pay more money. And we kept Pete's. We worked with them. We put a substantial amount of money into the renovation. It used to be an old Kentucky Fried Chicken building, and it had that weird tin roof, and it was Pete's Coffee, and it just looked weird. And now the level of construction there, the outdoor patios are just phenomenal. And now you can tell that there's pride of ownership there.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So, Jeff, and I want to talk to have both of you talk about this, but in sort of a different way. one of the things is both of you go beyond Costa Mesa. So we're obviously here talking primarily about Costa Mesa, but you both have properties in other cities. You started in Newport Beach. You started in
I started
first
in
place?
Fullerton and Orange.
Fullerton and Orange. So you came to Costa Mesa, but didn't necessarily start in Costa Mesa. And Jeff, Tabu Shabu is in how many locations now?
So
Six?
we have 7 open right now, and then another 4 in construction. So by the end of 22, we'll be at 11 locations, with 3 of them out of state. So 3 of them will be in Texas.
And I read that that you have a franchising program.
We do.
Talk
we do.
about talk about that.
So corporate wise, we control basically Costa Mesa, and then we have one in North Park, San Diego, which is close to downtown, and then one in Carlsbad. But outside of that, all of our locations are franchised. So what we do is we basically sell the concept, we train, and completely help an operator implement and give them an opportunity to run what we think to be is a great concept and bring it to their community.
And how is that to generate a market for franchise opportunities and bring franchisees in? How do you do that?
It's difficult. You have to have proof of concept. That's the key first thing that you have to have. Nobody's going to invest in anything, and a restaurant is a significant investment. I mean, obviously Mario, spends a great deal of effort to making his buildings beautiful, but even someone taking over a lease, the average cost of a 2,000 square foot restaurant is probably at least $500,000 these days. So for just a mom and pop operator to invest that much money is tremendous. So having a concept that's already been proven, that shows that the system works, is the first step. And then from that, usually the more locations you open, the more traffic starts. You start getting noticed on the radar. So I've been very fortunate to have some really good franchise operators that we've worked with over the few years, and we've only really been franchising for about 2-3 years. So we're kind of in our infancy still. We see a lot of potential. We're moving into some other states, but I have fun with it. It's something that I really believe in, and it started right here in Eastside, Costa Mesa, and on a concept that I didn't necessarily think was going to work, and I just tried it, and now it's a viable national brand, which is pretty cool. So in pre Tabu Shabu franchising, I was all about kind of what Mario was doing with independent concepts, fitting what a community needed. We opened up the Wayfarer in 2014. That was a big undertaking for us to take over the Detroit bar, and I remember Mario was actually one of our first customers. So talking about camaraderie and pumping each other up and wanting each other to do well, he was one of our first customers, and he was come checking out the music, and he's like, "This is really cool," and and then that's also understanding what your community needs, whether they liked that music, whether there's somebody else you could bring in to bring in better music. So the Detroit bar takeover was pretty overwhelming at first. Detroit had a very big legacy for great music in Costa Mesa, so we had to follow suit. Obviously we wanted to improve the building and make it nicer for the future generation, but at the same time we couldn't destroy whatever legacy was there. So that was a pretty dangerous game of what we had to play. So but after that anyway, with Tabu is I really did try to grow this brand into something that could be scalable. So it's difficult to find good operators, and it's difficult to find good locations these days. Actually, landlord-wise, Mario was almost our landlord in Orange. So we opened a location in Orange Circle, and he called me one day and said, "Hey, I have this great space," and I said, "We'll take it."
Yeah.
And then he unfortunately had a good opportunity to get rid of it pretty quickly. So
we owned the building for one day, and we had a crazy offer and sold it.
Which I would do the exact same thing. But one day he's like, "Hey, you want this?" And I said, "Yeah, I'll take it." Next day I'm like, "Hey, I still want it. I don't own it anymore." That sucks. But
I introduced Jeff to the new landlord,
Yes.
and Jeff is currently operating there with the Tabu Shabu.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
right in the Orange Circle. So very cool. Which he still has a business right across the street with the District Lounge, right? Yeah. So I mean we're kind of we still are near each other even when we're not near each other. So it's pretty cool.
So the Wayfarer, the Alley, Tabu Shabu, Oak and Coal. What, any other concepts that you?
I did. We did do a brief concept in the same shopping center as Oak and Coal and Tabu Shabu. We had a concept called Love and Puree, and it was organic baby food purees and organic baby food and different little snacks. And we did very well. You know, it was a difficult business to manage because it's perishables and organic produce, and it was right when my daughter was born. So my wife would bring the daughter in, and she would work and prepare in the kitchen, and it was a lot of fun. But we had an opportunity to sell the business to what's there now, which is a very, very great Mexican concept called Tres Muchachos. Small, little crafty Mexican restaurant, great wine selection. And they're still operating and doing great. So can't say that I'm bummed on getting rid of that concept. It was a lot of work, the purees, the baby food purees, but we had fun while doing it. So.
Yeah.
And I heard the Pancake House is on changing over.
Yeah, that's been the word for some time.
I heard it's going to be a Shake Shack. Is that true?
I was told it was going to be a breakfast concept.
Yes.
A breakfast concept.
Yeah.
Well, you're probably right.
So you should advise them on raising the A-frame. And
Raise the
building
A-frame,
what's
tear the
there,
building
then dropping
down,
it.
spend triple,
Yeah.
and then no one's going to care.
I think that's the biggest difficulty there is I think that that shopping center is on a land lease. So they have difficulty, investing incredible amounts of money. With Mario owning the building, you don't have to trade off quality of construction or quality of build because it's yours. Just like your home, it's yours. You spend the money to do it right and care about it. But the difficulty there is that building is going to need some serious rehab, and a business owner has to come in and drop that kind of coin and be on a lease, and that's a difficult undertaking.
That's exactly what I was saying earlier about you got to get the person who's financially motivated to put the proper infrastructure into it. And if it's just a lease, the person going in there is going to say, well, how much time is on the lease? How much can I spend?
Right.
Yeah.
And then what's the worth to the actual landlord for how much do they want to invest in their properties? And they're looking at it from a real estate only perspective. On every dollar I invest is $1 less of a return I'm going to get in the future on rent. Whereas we're not looking at it from the restaurant side or the real estate side. We're looking at both as a partnership.
Yeah. So I want to make sure we talk about another aspect of this is how many people you employ. So now you've got a group, the lounge group. So talk about the lounge group and how many people are. I know my son worked at Malarkey's for a bit.
Yep.
I mean, so many people in Costa Mesa are employed by and both of you. So talk about the lounge group, how many people you employ, what are some of your other properties?
Yes, so the lounge group is the human resources, accounting, and marketing arm for all the restaurants and bars. The restaurants and bars are actually owned independently. The lounge group, we're kind of just the umbrella that does the stuff that's scalable. And company-wide, between all the locations, we're at north of about 850 employees. We have 2 new locations opening up in downtown Fullerton. We're opening up a Irish pub called Mickey's Pub, and also a cowboy bar called the High Horse Saloon. And when those open, it'll be another 80 employees. So we'll be like north of 930, 940 employees within the next 60 days.
Wow. You're getting up there to 1,000 employees.
Yeah.
That's something.
And it's these days it's really difficult because procuring staff has gotten harder.
Right.
Something's something's in the water. People just don't want to work in the hospitality industry as much as they did prior to COVID. I just feel that when they had the mandatory COVID shutdowns, everyone just kind of got, everything ended up in disarray, and a lot of people left the area. They moved to other industries. They got comfortable, trying new things, and there's just been a nationwide labor shortage. You see it on the news every single day.
Well, touching on that, it's a common struggle. We're dealing with it hardcore too. But the COVID thing, I think what happened was everybody is kind of in this mindset where COVID really shifted their emotional well-being. They don't know what makes them happy anymore, right? I mean, for me, staying at home for 2 years was in the beginning awesome, and then towards the end miserable, right? And so I think that all these employees that were employed by Mario and myself and in the hospitality industry, it's an exciting industry. It's a lot of fun, and people that love it absolutely love it and could see themselves doing nothing else. But everyone is in this like quandary of what else do I do? or is this all there is to my life, and is this I think social media influences that,
Yes.
where it's like, oh, well, this is cool, everyone has the attention span of a gnat. And so I think it'll come back. I really do. I think we just have to give it time for this post-COVID era of people's emotions to settle down a little bit. I think emotionally we're all over the place, and
Well, there's also a lot of free money that got dispersed, and I think people just acclimated very quickly to enjoying time off, which is not a bad thing. I mean, I'd love to have time off as well, but I just don't have that opportunity. And people want to work from home more, and they're like remote working now with Zoom and everything else has become more acceptable. And people had to, when all the restaurants were on closed, they were actually looking for other industries to work in because the one that they were working in was not available.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think that, like Jeff said, there's going to be a point where everything settles down. I think things are going to get back to normal. And the world is such a crazy place now with inflation and interest rates, and everything's kind of in a state of flux. And once everything settles down, who knows when that's going to be, 12, 24 months when that happens, I think things will get back to normal. We're just not there yet.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it too is stability. I mean, if we can say one thing about the hospitality and the restaurant industry is during the pandemic and COVID, because of the nature of the response, it became very unstable. You'd be open and then you'd be closed.
Yeah.
Then you'd be open with restrictions, and then some of the restrictions, and that of course affected the staff and how many staff you could have on and how much money they would make.
It also affected them psychologically. Some of the staff were having a really hard time with losing their jobs, getting their jobs back, losing their jobs again with the next shutdown. We had management that just couldn't handle it. They didn't sign up for opening, closing, and having no predictability in what they do in their career. And we had management for the first time ever say, we just can't handle it anymore. We can't handle shutting down one more time.
Yeah.
And we're really lucky as a company because we were nimble, and so was Jeff. We were able to procure amazing staff at the end of COVID. In late 2020, early 21, in January, when everything was reopening, we got some amazing staff. Well, now, when we have turnover now, it's a little bit more difficult to replace people, but we have a really good base of quality people because we were nimble and we operated quickly and we opened quickly.
Yeah.
And actually, piggybacking on that with their mental health and the quality of their lives at the time, it's not only just the opening and closing, but the general vibe of the world changed, right? The political turmoil and the real dichotomy between the left and the right, and that bled into restaurants, which was amazing to me because it shouldn't, right? Restaurants are inclusive, like we talked about before this. It should be about everyone deserves to come into our restaurant. We don't care what your belief system is.
Right.
It doesn't matter. You're here to eat. You break bread with your friends. It's not about what your belief system on the presidency is or COVID protocol. And what happened was we started seeing that vibe trickle into the restaurant. Where our guests would come in, especially because now we have new protocols that mask mandates and vaccination statuses and
Are you being strict enough?
Should
you be open? Are you at 50% occupancy or 60?
Exactly.
Did you have proper distancing in between your tables? And some people came in with no mask on and didn't care. Some people came on with a mask and they're measuring tables. Like, I want to make sure I'm 6 feet.
And no matter what you did, you were the bad guy. No matter what side you took or what avenue you decided to go down, you were the bad guy. And it's like, as an operator, I was like, when the hell did I become some sort of political figure to make decisions on this?
Yes.
I'm going to follow the rules the best I can for the safety of my employees, for the well-being of their futures in terms of monetarily as well. All these things I had to take into consideration and lay out what I believe to be the best approach. And we got hate from both sides. It could be from the person. I remember down in San Diego, we had a lady come in the door, and she, we were open at a time when we were allowed to be open, and she opened the door and screams, "You're killing everybody." It's like, what? I'm just serving food over here. Well, you're killing everybody by letting people come in your restaurant. I'm like, it's state guidance says we're allowed to do such a thing, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter because that and the whole dynamic of human interaction was that way. So I think our staff had to bear the brunt of that. I don't know, there's a famous viral video of a hostess in New York. She's at the front and said something about put on your mask. And she got into a full fist fight with, and this is, 17, 18-year-old hostess, working at a restaurant. She shouldn't have to get punched in the face because she asked somebody to put a mask on, or didn't ask somebody to put a mask on, or whatever, or asked their vaccination status. We're not in the position to have to, and a lot of industries had to do it. I mean, like airline flight attendants. I mean, you've seen the millions of viral videos about how much hate they got, enforcing a company's policy. So it became really difficult for us to navigate that, as operators, but even more so for staff. These guys aren't necessarily in the owner's box. They're not necessarily reaping benefits of being an owner. They're employees that make their wages, and we do the best to provide for them the best we can, but they shouldn't have to be sustain that kind of abuse or mental turmoil.
And that's probably another factor, undoubtedly another factor that made it on the back end difficult for you to find staffing, because they had to go through some
100%.
of those traumatic experiences during the pandemic, and then they don't want to go back into the industry because we're not. I hate to say, it feels like we're through it because we're sitting here in the basement of the City Hall,
The dungeon.
and in the dungeon, and we don't have our masks on, which is great, but we don't know what's going to happen, and we just don't know. And so
the most important thing is you don't talk about two things in a restaurant: religion or politics.
And that seems like that's all that people talk about now.
Yeah.
I know.
You know?
I know. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate the comments about staff, especially. My two daughters, both teenagers, work in the restaurant business. My oldest one's worked for a number of them in the area as a hostess. My younger one's a busser now, which is great. I love that they're getting some real good life skills. But I didn't
need a job, by the way. I'm hiring.
I could
yeah, okay.
I could push for a second one. But I don't always appreciate what they had to go through, especially like you said, a 17 or 18-year-old kid as a hostess having to deal with customers who all of a sudden have a political agenda. And it's not about just sitting down and having a nice meal and all the other wait times at a restaurant. It's all this other stuff. But I would say, kind of shifting a little bit here, one hopefully benefit of the last couple of years is sort of a rediscovery of outdoor dining, and I know both of you have been able to take advantage of that. And I'm pleased that the city was able to institute a program. We had a little bumps in the beginning, but it's amazing to me in Southern California that all of a sudden people have decided outdoor dining is this new thing when it should be something we always do. And more importantly, I think that, and maybe you can tell us whether or not your customers have responded well to that, and if the downside of taking over parking or losing parking has really been a problem, or if that's a trade-off people are willing to make.
Well, we got lucky at Wild Goose because we did the construction during COVID. We had started construction, I believe it was at the very end of 2019. COVID shut us down on March 17th, 2020. And at that point, the building was in the framing stage. And my partner and I looked at each other and said, do we keep working or do we stop the construction? Because we're going to run out of money, right? There's no more income coming in. And we decided to keep working, and thank God we did, because by the end of 2020, we completed the construction of the Wild Goose. And the Wild Goose, we designed it in 2016. It has a massive outdoor patio, bifold doors, open windows, and then the joke is I designed it to be COVID approved.
Yes.
Even though we designed it years prior. So we never did the outdoor COVID patio at Wild Goose because we didn't need to.
Right.
And we were really lucky to be able to have the outdoor dining there. But then at Playa Mesa, we did have it.
Right.
And at Playa Mesa, it helped save us. And unfortunately, at Playa Mesa, the way the parking lot was configured, the patio just wasn't really conducive to being a desirable patio. Because you had to leave the building, then walk across the parking lot to go to a detached patio.
Yeah.
So some businesses were able to have a really cool, good parking lot layout. So their stores rolled right into the parking lot. They were eating up stalls, and it didn't affect them. On the boardwalk in Newport Beach, we have Dory Deli, Blackie's, and Super Pongo Taqueria. We have these great patios right out front, ocean front, ocean views.
Yes.
We got to get rid of them in 2 weeks.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because it's on public property. I guess there's an issue with the Coastal Commission. And like even though the existing restaurants face the ocean with ocean views, when our customers show up, the first seats they pick are the outdoor patio seats.
Yeah.
The inside fills up last, the patio fills up first. So we know what the customers want. The customers want to be outside.
Right.
And also Orange County, especially Costa Mesa, Newport, the best weather in the world.
Yes.
Not the best weather in the state or the country, in the world,
I agree.
year round.
Yes, I agree. I'm glad you said that.
Yeah.
That's true.
It's totally true, yeah.
So we're here in City Hall. So I've got a question for both of you. Okay, what can the city do? I mean, any city, but particularly Costa Mesa. What can the city do to make your lives easier? And to help you in your restaurants.
I mean, I would say this city is incredibly easy to work with. I don't know about your experiences, Mario, but building department to the planning commission, I mean, we actually recently had to do a planning decision with expanding Oak and Coal. And, it relatively was a very simple process. I would say as long as the city kind of maintains that mentality about helping businesses not be afraid of starting that process, because it can be daunting, especially if it's a mom and pop operator who's never done it. Mario has incredible expertise in the field. I've done it a few times, but someone who's just starting off wants to bring in a new cool food concept, make it inviting for them, make the fees obviously not too absorbent that it chases away that initial, because I think that's the foundation of the city. Is I think it started with trying to entice people it's the city of the arts, right? So enticing people to be creative and try new ideas and not being so bureaucratic in the process that they lose interest and they go to somewhere that's easier to deal with. Now, luckily, I believe we are still one of the easier places. I've dealt with a few cities now, and I'd say it's probably in the top 3 of ease of getting stuff done. But I'd say just maintaining that would be huge.
I would say just continue to work on the culture of the city staff, all the city departments, to be a pro-business culture. And it's not something that happens overnight. I think it's over the course of months and years. If you guys can just keep that on the forefront and work with staff to have a pro-business mentality and have a little bit more of a problem solver, not a problem finder mentality. Depending on who you work with on the city staff side, sometimes you walk in there, they just tell you all the negatives and how hard it's going to be, and they don't make an effort to find an amicable solution for an issue that that might be on the plans.
Yeah.
So we have a great relationship with the city. The police department's fantastic, and so I would just say citywide, whether it's the police department, fire department, whether it's city staff, building, planning, engineering, just keeping that culture, that pro-business, pro-community culture. I've seen different cities in Orange County over the course of years. They did not have that culture, and it was an adversarial relationship that if you were a business owner, restaurant owner specifically, or bar owner, it was always, okay, we're going to start the conversation with every roadblock you can possibly think of before you get started.
Right.
And then those same cities have, over the course of years with good city management, they've changed the culture. And now those same cities, you walk in there and they say, we want your business, what can we do to work with you?
Absolutely.
So I've seen the transition, I won't say which cities, but I've seen the transition from adversarial, anti-business to the same cities being pro-business and inclusive and working together. And it just makes everyone happier. It makes the residents happier, because when you create that adversarial relationship, then some of the squeaky wheels in the neighborhood feed off of that.
Yeah.
And then you get the weird people sending out emails and complaining about stuff because they know there's already an adversarial public-private relationship that's in existence. When it's a cohesive relationship, then the squeaky wheels kind of realize they can't exploit something that should not be exploited.
I think that's really true, that people, everybody needs to understand the kind of the symbiotic relationship that we have, that without the business community, we wouldn't have the sales tax. We're going into our budget season, and we're a sales tax based city as opposed to Newport, which is more of a property tax based city.
Right,
and TOT. Yeah, and so we really rely on our businesses. And so the residents have to have an appreciation of the importance of the businesses to our city and providing the city services, but also how the businesses make our community so great. If you live close, we live walking distance
Yeah.
from Michelin Star restaurants, from the top restaurants in Orange County, if not California, if not the United States. So yeah, we have to really appreciate the interrelationship between business and the residents in the city. You guys ready to do some parting shots? So you got any questions you've been burning to ask or statements you?
Not burning, but there's one, and I've been kind of holding on to, which is the idea of the role of social media for your restaurants, because it seems like I can't go to a meal without my kids snapping a photo of something
Yeah.
and posting it, and it seems like that's just ubiquitous. And I'm imagining it's helpful for restaurants, but I don't quite know. So I'm curious if you do manage social media accounts, and it's a
I think
daily.
you have to. It's an absolute must in the business now. Obviously everything is driven by influencers, food and drink influencers, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook is still a viable option. But yeah, we definitely still devote quite a bit of budget into that with social media influencing and content creation and taking photography, which is something I think we've always done in the business, but now it's so important to constantly be relevant. Like, back when I first started, we may take pictures of the dishes once a year, if that, and then now it's literally every week we're taking new pictures of the dishes, new content, more stuff, because people are they need change, they need instant satisfaction on what's getting them going at that moment. So it's going to continue that direction. Mario does a phenomenal job on his social media. We do our best, and I think it's going to keep going that way.
So there's been multiple industries that have spun off of social media. And I remember back, I can't remember if it was 2007 or so, my friend Andy, who was involved in technology, was the first time I heard the word social media, because it was Facebook was active. I'm not sure if Instagram was really popular yet. Twitter was just coming out. And he says, Mario, all that stuff you do, it's called social media.
Yeah.
And that was the first time I heard that term, right? Because the term never existed before. And then about a year later, he said, hey, it's going to become critical that you get a social media manager. I'm like, are you out of your mind?
Yeah.
The idea that I'm going to hire someone to manage my Facebook and Instagram, you're crazy. We have a full marketing department now. We have a social media manager. We have a marketing department. We have a full-time graphic designer. And then the graphic designer is there for the social media. He's not there to just design our POS that's on the walls and the menus. He's there to put content on the social media full-time. So we've got multiple salaries now dedicated to your question is, it's critical. You have to have it, and if it's driving sales, it means you're doing it right. If you're not driving sales, you're probably doing something wrong. But if your operations are not in line with the quality of your marketing, then people are going to show up, they're going to have a bad experience, and they're not going to come back. The most important thing that I've noticed that's huge, and Jeff might have noticed it too with some of those new openings, I've worked in the restaurant industry my entire life. I've opened up restaurants before, during, and after social media. Before it existed, while it was becoming a thing, and then after it was already matured. And when you opened up a restaurant before social media, you had about a 2-year window where you'd be able to gauge if a restaurant was going to be viable or not. And over that 2-year window, at the end of about 24 months, you would say, the restaurant's going to plateau and maintain, it's going to be on an upward trajectory, or it's going to decline and go out of business after about 2 years. Now it's light years. You can tell that in about 6 months.
Wow.
Yeah, you go to a restaurant, because people make their decisions now not based on their experience, or not even the experience of a friend of theirs that went there, which is what you did before social media.
Right.
People make their decision on whether they want to come to your business based on what somebody else wrote that you don't know. Someone you don't know made a comment about their experience, and you won't go there because of that review.
Yeah.
So that's how quickly the information travels now. So you've got to be spot on your food, your service, your ambiance. You've got to hit on all the senses, all the 6 senses, everything: smell, food, taste, ambiance, lighting. It's got to be perfect, because somebody's going to make a comment on Facebook, Instagram, Yelp, Google, TripAdvisor. One of those platforms, they're going to mention their experience, and if you get too many negative ones, somebody's going to read that and just not even show up at all.
Yeah.
Not even give you the opportunity to win them over.
Okay, so any other parting shots? Anything you want to say that you didn't get a chance to say?
No, I think we covered it all.
Jeff,
Costa Mesa.
we said it all?
Yeah.
As Howard would say, you said it all. All right, well, thank you very much. We had a great time. I hope you enjoyed listening to our third volume of Costa Mesa Now. Thank you, Jeff Chow. Thank you, Mario Marovic. Thank you, Jeff Harlan, the sage of the east side of Costa Mesa. And we'll see you next time in episode 4.